The book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 9. A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. All right, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahawah, bahasham Yahawashi, bahasham Rahakwadash. Yahawah is the true name of the Heavenly Father in the Holy Tongue. Yahawashi is the true name of the High Priest and Savior of Israel. And Rahakwadash is the Holy Spirit, which is the Comforter. Double honors the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for leading by example in these last days, and Shalawam to the hopeful elect, all you Aki and making your bodies a living sacrifice. Now, through the Spirit, the name of this lesson is Great Millstone gets the whole Bible right except for 2 verses, and this is going to be in response to, I'll use the word brother. He's a new brother to the faith. He's been watching the videos for a minute. He believes in the name Yahawashi. He believes in the prophecies. He knows he's an Israelite. And, he's been pretty active on the comment board. He's not a scoffer. He's a sincere brother, but he's been watching different camps. And like brothers say all the time, once you know this is the truth, you're supposed to stick with the men that are teaching the 100% truth, because when you watch different camps, they're going to break down scriptures differently and you're going to get mixed up in the spirit. And this is what happens. So a few days ago, we had a little dialogue on the comment board. It says, this is why that 12 tribe chart can be dangerous. And this is in response to a complete weirdo claiming to be the high priest Levite, the top Levite on the planet right now, which that's a whole nother topic. But I said, the whole Bible is dangerous if you're not of the elect. And he said, facts. Then a day later, he just jumped out his body with this comment right here. He says, especially teaching a rape doctrine. I hope y'all stop misinterpreting the word like that. And it's beautiful that the Spirit just had him blurt this out a day later. Jake watches the videos, but they have this idea in their mind that, well, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that, I don't believe that they're breaking that down correctly. And the Spirit just had him confess this. This had nothing to do with the topic, nothing to do with a comment. It just a day later after this initial exchange, he just blurted that out. So, it's an opportunity to edify. But I responded with, we don't teach a quote unquote rape doctrine. We teach the truth of the Bible. If you believe we're misinterpreting the word, you should definitely stop listening to us. And I cited Romans 14:23, which tells you clearly that if you doubt what you're eating, you're damned. You're damned if you're listening to someone teach the Bible, but you don't really believe. You're just condemning yourself and mixing up your spirit with all sorts of, just strange, perverse doctrines. You're taking the 100% truth and mixing it with lies, when it tells you in 1 John, the 2nd chapter, that no lie is of the truth. You either believe in the whole truth or you don't believe in the truth at all. There is no, well, this camp has this and that camp has that part right, but this other camp, they're teaching that correctly. That's nowhere in the scriptures. Somebody is teaching 100% truth and everyone else is teaching lies, basically. There is no, again, 1 John, the 2nd chapter, tells you that there's no lie that's of the truth. And you're damned if you believe that. If you believe that someone's teaching the truth, except for this one little thing right here, then you're damned, basically, because you're not receiving the word with power. You're not receiving, matter of fact, let me get this in Thessalonians before I continue. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 13. For this cause also we thank Yahawaah without ceasing, because when you received the word of Yahawaah, which ye heard of us, ye received it not as the word of men, ye received it not as the word of men, but as it is in truth, the word of Yahawaah bahasham Yahawashi, which effectually worketh also in you that believe. So when you hear the word being preached by the true men of the Lord, you don't receive it as the word of men. You don't receive it as, well, that's his opinion. That's his interpretation of that. That's it. This is how so-called Christianity spreads around. You have the Baptists, they have their version of the truth. You have the Catholics, they have their version of the truth. The Pentecostals have their version of the truth. Everybody is holding the same book, but they all have their own personal opinion. And then you have, the top bug outs. So I'm non-denominational. I'm just spiritual. I believe in spirituality. I believe in positive vibrations. That's not of Yahawaah Bashem Yahawashi. There is a word that is the word of Yahawaah Bashem Yahawashi, the only true living power. And when you come across the true teachers, you're not supposed to receive it as, well, this is what they got right, but this is what they got wrong, or they're saying this, but in my opinion is that. That's going to put a reprobate spirit on you. And the next thing you know, you're going to be like these bug outs that are talking about, well, the book of Hebrews isn't really the word of God. The writings of Apostle Paul, that's not really part of the word. I mean, it's in the Bible, but I don't really believe in it. This is all going into, again, Romans, the 14th chapter. You're damned if you eat, if you doubt what it is you're eating. If you don't believe that it's the pure 100% doctrine, you're bugging yourself out. But he says this, he says, no just Deuteronomy 22, verse 28 and 29. I don't think lay hold of has the same meaning as force in the prior verse. So I asked him this. I said, so you believe we're breaking down the whole Bible correctly except for 2 verses? Now, this question is somewhat facetious. I had no idea in my mind that he would respond like this. He said, yeah, as far as I know, I'm still on the milk, but everything you teach makes sense to me, especially lunar Sabbath. So again, like I said, for brothers who don't know, this is a brother who's been subscribed for a minute. And like I said, I'll use the word brother because he does believe, but he's just bugged out on this one particular topic. And it's very controversial, even though it shouldn't be. Now, if this was just some random person, I would have just ignored it. Bug outs leave comments every day. But, like I said, this brother's been watching, he's been active, and he's sincerely learning. He sincerely wants to understand, the truth of the scriptures. So, a lot of brothers have done lessons on this topic, but I looked and I never really did a full lesson on it. So, Abaratazah, I can handle this topic with grace and it be edifying to the elect. But I want to start with a couple caveats, quick disclaimer. Like this lesson is not suitable for children or the faint of heart. The purpose of this lesson is going to be to edify, not to be offensive or shocking. We don't do clickbait here. I know a handful of brothers watch my videos with their family. I don't know if this is one that's appropriate for everyone, so you might want to, shut it off or watch it in headphones. The second disclaimer is that Great Millstone does not teach rape. We don't have a rape doctrine. We don't promote or condone attacking people of any race, male or female. We teach the Bible. We teach the whole 100% truth of the Holy Scriptures. And that includes prophecies, that includes laws, statutes, and commandments. And we're not affiliated with any other Hebrew Israelite group or any black identity extremists. We've never been accused or convicted of raping anyone, despite what a lot of emotional Israelites will tell you on social media, but not to our faces. We've never done anything of the sort. So before I go into this Deuteronomy 22 and 28, I want to get this in Timothy right quick to just cement what this is really all about. This is 1 Timothy chapter 1, and I'm going to start at verse 8. But we know that the law is good if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man. Let me read that again. It says, knowing this, knowing what? That the law is good if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners. So the fact that there's a law on rape in the Bible is not to promote rape. It's a law against rape. All right. That's why there's laws against murder, because people murder and you have to have judgments that deal with how to handle murder. There's also killing that's lawful, and you need to be able to discern between a lawful killing and an unlawful killing, which is murder. So there's laws against theft in the Bible. That doesn't mean the Bible is promoting theft. There's laws against rape in the Bible. That doesn't mean that the Most High is promoting rape. This is a really, like I said, it's a controversial topic, but it shouldn't be. It's very straightforward. The law is good if a man use it lawfully, and the law was not made for the righteous. The law was made for the wicked. The law was made for, let me read it again. It says, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers. That's who the law is made for. Now, in the kingdom of heaven, obviously, the laws are going to be placed in our inward parts, and we're going to be a nation of kings and priests unto the heathen, which don't have any part in the new covenant. But this is a law that was in full effect in the ancient world, and even to this day, in various parts around the world, it would be very beneficial for them to enact this law. Now, we're going to go right into the so-called controversy, which is Deuteronomy 22, and we'll start at verse 28. It says, if a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found, then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. Now, you have a lot of Israelite groups. Really, every Israelite group except for Great Millstone that I've seen, they break the scripture down horribly wrong. Ironically, when you go into any Bible dictionary, Bible encyclopedia, or just search this topic on the internet, virtually every Bible scholar gets it right, because the laws of the Most High are pretty straightforward. You don't need to be a prophet to understand the commandments of, the book of Exodus, the book of Leviticus, the book of Deuteronomy, etc. Now, I have heard various Israelites break this down correctly, but they weren't part of the body. Every camp that I've seen, like an actual camp, they all lie about the scripture. They straight up say this doesn't mean that, that word doesn't mean that, and they just blatantly lie. The biggest culprits being the Sakari. They're a bunch of weasels who are on the hot seat right now, as it were, for lying about the scriptures, lying about the book of Hebrews. And, for brothers who don't know the history, this all goes back to a guy named Brother Polite, a Hotep black conscious scam artist. He had to sit down with Alazar Bunloya, who's the head of the Sakari. This had to be, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It was a minute. This was before I was even in the truth. They had an interview, and Polite asked Sakari about this topic right here, this verse, and Sakari lied about it, and he got confounded by Polite. Polite actually went into this website that we're on right now, the blueletterbible.org. He went into the Blue Letter and proved that Sakari was breaking down the scriptures incorrectly and lying about the commandments. And ever since then, Sakari's just been waxing worse and worse and worse. They went on Sinetta to attack their elders. They've just been on social media calling us rapists and pedophiles, which they know that we're not. They actually used to be in Great Millstone, and they've never seen anything like that. They've never been asked to do anything like that. So they're bearing false witness. They're slandering us. And really, it all goes back to pride. And they hate the Heavenly Father at the end of the day, because if you hate the commandments and you're ashamed of the commandments, ultimately you hate the author of the commandments. Now, we're going to break this topic down, Abaratazah, with grace. But the first thing I want to do is go into the argument that they use to say that this is not talking about rape, even though this entire portion is talking about rape. This whole section is talking about different types of rape. If you rape a woman that's married and she doesn't cry out, if you rape a woman that's married and she does cry out, and then here it goes into if you rape a woman that's not married or betrothed. So this whole section is talking about forcing yourself upon a woman. Now, before I break this down correctly, I want to present the argument that the detractors use, the way that they break this down and twist the scriptures, the argument that they put forth to confuse people. And I'm going to show you how it's completely erroneous, and then we're going to get the full truth of what this is talking about. Now, out of everyone I've seen break this down, Alazar, he's done the most, just going above and beyond to pervert the scriptures. And every time he does it, he does the same routine. The very first thing he does is lie. He says the word Deuteronomy means second book of the law. So every law in the book of Deuteronomy is just repeating the laws in Exodus and Leviticus. Then he jumps from Deuteronomy 22 to Exodus 22 immediately. He'll change the subject and say, well, look, Deuteronomy is just quoting this. And he'll jump to Exodus 22 and read this. This is the book of Exodus, chapter 22, verse 16. And if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. Now, it's very slick. If you don't really understand what's going on, he's a very slick individual, and you might be persuaded when he does this. He says, again, the first thing he says is Deuteronomy means the second book of the law. So every law in the book of Deuteronomy is just quoting another book in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Then he jumps to Exodus and says that Deuteronomy 22 and 28 is just a repeat of Exodus 22 and 16. So he says this word lay hold is the same as entice. It's just, phrased a little bit differently. He's equating these two laws. Now, obviously, that's a lie if you know the law. Anyone who reads the law, you know that the book of Deuteronomy has numerous laws that are nowhere else in the Bible. For example, Deuteronomy 22 and 5, a woman shall not wear that which pertaineth to a man. A man's not supposed to wear a woman's garments. That's not a repeat of another law somewhere. That's just strictly in the book of Deuteronomy. Then you have laws dealing with, if you have a lazy son, you're supposed to stone him to death. That's in the book of Deuteronomy. That's not in the book of Exodus. You have all sorts of laws, like you're not supposed to remove the landmarks. Like there's a multitude of laws that are strictly in the book of Deuteronomy. So the foundation of his argument is a lie. Every law in the book of Deuteronomy is not quoting some other law in another book. That is completely erroneous. Now, the next thing he does is he says the word lay hold is the same as the word entice. Now, this is easily disprovable. Let's go to this word lay hold here. It's Strong's G 8610, which is tapash. Tapash means to catch, to seize, to arrest, to take hold of, to wield, to be arrested, to be caught, to be taken. Now, it also means to use skillfully. So when you handle something, you're manhandling it. You're using your hands with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're stealing it or you're arresting it. So when you go into the concordance, you'll see that it's used, for example, if you're handling an instrument, it'll use the word tapash. But then when you go into a law, for example, again, this is the law dealing with the lazy child. Then shall his father and his mother lay hold, tapash, on him. It means to arrest. That's what the word means. Now, he's going to argue that, The way I've heard them break it down, they'll say, well, you know how it is when you in the hood, you catch shorty, you catch a bitch, they try to mix this black culture hood bullshit with the laws of the Most High, which this has nothing to do with black culture. When you go into the ancient world, there was no such thing as I'm going to run game on a woman because she's above me and I have to tap dance for her in order to get her approval before we have sex. That's not a thought that was on the earth 4,000 years ago. When you go into entice in Exodus 22, this is patha. It means to entice, to deceive, to persuade, to be open-minded, to be naive, to be deceived, to be gullible. This involves tricking a woman. This is not running game. Like you walk up and say hi, and you ask a woman what her sign is. This is not dealing with that. This is dealing with deception, deceiving someone to come back to your home, and then you pop them. This is not running game on women. Again, the whole concept of running game is based on gynocracy, is based on feminism. It's based on the idea that a woman is above you and you have to meet her approval. That's a new thing on the earth. In the ancient world, women chased men. Women wanted a son. Women wanted to be a wife. There was no, I'm over here doing my own thing. I'm strong and independent. And then you have to run game on me. I'm going to walk up and down the street by myself. And then you have to tap dance in order to get me to like you. That's a new concept on the earth. Now, Jake naturally has it in him to want women to like him. Now, we're just a natural, that's just how we are. When you compare Jake to the other nations, Jake is really the top nation when it comes to genuinely liking women. When you look at Esau, for example, he looks at a woman as being just a means to an end. He uses women for procreation to keep his lineage going, but he doesn't actually enjoy the company of women. Jake does. So it's easy to read some of these laws and get confused because you're looking at it from an emotional standpoint. But the laws of the Most High don't deal with emotions at all. And we're going to prove that in the scriptures. Now, when you go into Exodus, let me go back to Exodus 22, because he'll read verse 16, but then won't read 17. When you read, listen, this is very plain. Let's go back. When you look at the judgment of verse 28 here in verse 29, and you compare it to the judgment here in verse 17 to verse 16, you can clearly see this is two different judgments. So why would the same action have two different judgments if the book of Exodus and the book of Deuteronomy are talking about the same law? If Deuteronomy 22 and 28 was just quoting Exodus 22 and 16, why are there two different judgments for the same act? So let's read it. This is, again, Deuteronomy 22 and 28. It says, if a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, meaning she hasn't known a man and she's not promised to a man. But again, when you go up here and read the actual judgment of raping someone's wife, the judgment is that the man's going to be put to death. And if she doesn't scream out, she's with it, which means she's going to be put to death too. But here it says, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, to pash, to seize, to grab, to arrest, and lie with her, and they be found. Then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. And the key word here is humble also, because this goes into breaking a woman down, breaking someone down to the ground. The root word for humble is hamas, which means ground. When you're humiliated, when you're humble, it makes you low to the ground. But that's the main point here I want to talk about, is this judgment. It says, he shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver. Now, when you go into the judgment here for enticing, it says, if her father utterly refuse to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. Now, what is the dowry of virgins? When you go into the ancient world, and even today, a dowry is based on the family's wealth, the bride, the family of the groom, the situation at hand. It was something that was negotiated between two parties. It was something that, let's get some examples real quick, because this is two very different judgments, so it's clearly not the same law. This is Genesis chapter 24, verse 15. And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Malchah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her picture upon her shoulder. So this is going into Rebekah, who was the wife of Isaac. It says, and the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her, and she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up. Now, when you go on down, you can read this chapter. It talks about Rebekah. But right here it says, behold, Rebekah is before thee, take her and go, let her be thy master's son's wife, as Yahawah had spoken. And it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped Yahawah bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. Now, this is not 50 shekels. When you go into the ancient world, if you have a daughter that's extremely pleasant to look upon, she's feminine, she's obedient, she's from a good stock, you're from a high family, you could demand way more than 50 shekels, or you could demand less. It really depends on how badly you want to get your daughter out of your house, if you want to marry into a particular type of family. There were some engagements that were made without even any money exchanging hands at all. When you go into Judges, Joshua, Samuel, you had men that offered their daughters if you... Basically, you could put a bounty on someone's head. Like, look, I want to take over this city. I want to kill this person here. Whoever does it, I'm going to give you my daughter to marry. That's a form of a dowry. You negotiate a dowry. Again, the father of the bride and the father of the groom, or the groom himself, they would negotiate a dowry. That's when you go into the judgment of enticing a woman, it goes into the dowry of virgins. This is not talking about rape. This is talking about enticing. But when you read Deuteronomy 22 and 29, the judgment is 50 shekels of silver, and he cannot put her away, meaning you can't deal with a woman, take it, and then put her away because you didn't like the way it felt or you didn't like the way she treated you afterwards. This is something you have to deal with. This is a judgment. Both of these are judgments. Deuteronomy 22 and 29 and Exodus 22 and 17. These are two different judgments. Now, when you go into Genesis 29, what was the dowry when Jacob wanted Rachel? The dowry in that situation was he had to work for 7 years. And then, the father ended up playing him and he had to work for 7 more years. But you could see an example there. That was the dowry of virgins. They negotiated a deal. Like, look, you want to marry my daughter, you need to do this. Now, again, going back into the scriptures, the father of the bride could negotiate whatever he wanted. Look, you want my daughter, you got to go kill this guy. You want my daughter, you got to go conquer this city. You want my daughter, you got to work for me 7 years. You want my daughter, you got to pay this amount of money. It was something that was negotiated. That's what the dowry of virgins is. But this, again, this is not the dowry of virgins. This is a penalty. This is a punishment. 50 shekels of silver. This is non-negotiable. The law doesn't say if you lay hold on her, you have to pay the dowry of virgins. No, it says 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. Now, the first thing you have to understand in the scriptures is that a wife is a possession. When you read Sirach, the 36th chapter, it tells you that plainly. He that getteth a wife beginneth a possession, a helpmate. Now, when you look at so-called rape laws today, they're based on something called autonomy. Let me get that real quick. It says autonomy, the quality or state of being self-governing, especially the right of self-government. The territory was granted autonomy. Self-directing freedom and especially moral independence, personal autonomy, a self-governing state. Now, in modern society, women have something called female autonomy. They have total control over their own bodies. They even have slogans like "my body, my choice." You can't make a woman do anything against her will in this society. So you growing up here and then you reading the Bible, something like this, your brain, if it's too westernized, you can't wrap your head around a world where women don't have autonomy. But that's exactly how it was in the ancient world. A woman couldn't say "my body, my choice." A woman had no authority over her own body. When you go into, I believe it's Judges, I want to say 11, it's one of those chapters where basically someone promised the Most High, like, look, if you give me a victory over Moab, then whatever happens, whatever walks in through the door, I'm going to offer it as a burnt offering. I'm going to sacrifice it. And his daughter ended up walking through the door, and he made a vow to the Most High. So he had to put his daughter down. Now, when he told his daughter this, she was with it. She didn't say, well, look, Dad, that was your decision. You can't do this to me. I'm my own woman. I'm my own, no, man, she was with it. It was understood that whatever the father says goes, that he's the head of the household. Right now, people will say, well, the man is the head of the house. But then when you go into actual examples of that, you realize none of these people really believe that. They don't really believe that a man has full authority over his wife and children. Now, depending on how westernized your mind is, when you come across a law like this, you can't really fathom, why would the Most High allow this? Why would he be against female autonomy? And it's very simple, because the Most High is not the author of confusion. It's confusion for a man to be guilty of a crime for doing something that another man is not guilty for doing. Basically, when you believe in something like female autonomy, you're putting the fate of a man's hands and how a woman feels. There's no commandment in the Bible that's based on a woman's feelings. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. Right now, there's something called sexual harassment, right? If you're working with a woman and she finds you attractive and you're flirting with her at the job, that's fine. But if you're unattractive to her and you flirt with her at the job, then she feels uncomfortable, and that's sexual harassment. The reason that's wicked is because you have two different men doing the exact same thing, performing the exact same action. One of them is a crime and one of them is not a crime. Based on what? Based on how the woman feels. The same thing with wife beating. You have guys that'll, put hands on their woman, and, sometimes they're with it. They'll go back to the man. They might cry. They might, cause a scene, but ultimately they'll go back to the guy. Then you have another guy. He puts hands on his wife. He may not even beat her. He might just push her against the wall or do something like that. She goes crazy. She calls the cops. She, takes half. It's the exact same thing. Two different men are performing the exact same action, but one is a crime and one is not a crime based on what? The feelings of a woman. The same thing with so-called date rape. You have women that say, I got drunk, one thing led to another, he raped me. Then you have another situation where you have this guy, this rapper, Rick Ross, he's rapping about putting dope in a woman's drink. And the very next week, women were cheering, they were singing the lyrics to the song, they were completely with it. Now, if something is right or wrong, that's based on the laws of the Most High. You can't have two different men perform the same action. Well, because this guy's handsome, it's okay. Because this guy's tall, it's okay. This guy over here, he's broke, he's short. So it's a crime when he does it. That's what modern society pushes, this idea that a woman is in charge of whether or not a man is guilty of a crime. That's completely insane. When you go into the laws of the Most High, it's based on the actions of men, and the actions are weighed by YAHAWAH, bahasham, Yahawashi. Now, what does this have to do with rape? Very simple. Rape is the number one fantasy that women have. When you look at 50 Shades of Grey, when you look at these so-called romance novels, which are really, it's just porn for women. They're not romance novels. It's pornography for women. They all involve rape fantasies. And when you go into it, this is published by the National Library of Medicine. It says, the nature of women's rape fantasies, an analysis of prevalence, frequency, and contents. Now, before I read this, I want to be clear. We don't teach rape. We don't promote rape. We're not saying it's right to rape. The whole point of this is to show you that there are certain circumstances in which a woman is actually turned on by the thought of this. Now, if a woman is raped by a really rich man, this becomes a fantasy. This becomes something that you can write into a novel and sell tens of millions of copies to women. But then if it's just some random guy, then it's the worst crime ever. It's the worst thing you could ever do to a woman. This is based on what? Female autonomy. The idea that two different men can perform the same act and one is a criminal and the other is not a criminal. That's based on confusion, man. That's total confusion. An act is an act, and there's a judgment for that act. It's not based on whether or not a woman likes it. But that's the purpose I'm reading, is to show you that this is actually something that a lot of women fantasize about. More than half. It says, abstract. This study evaluated the rape fantasies of female undergraduates using a fantasy checklist that reflected the legal definition of rape and a sexual fantasy log that included systematic prompts and self-ratings. Results indicated that 62% of women have had a rape fantasy. 62%, which is somewhat higher than previous estimates. For women who have had rape fantasies, the median frequency of these fantasies was about 4 times per year, with 14% of participants reporting that they had rape fantasies at least once a week. Now, again, this is not to say that rape is okay. I have to keep saying this because this topic makes Jake extremely emotional. The irony of this whole topic is that women understand Deuteronomy 22 perfectly. It's the men that can't wrap their heads around it. It's crazy. Like, a woman will lose her mind when you bring up order, submission, obedience, women keeping silence in the church. There's certain commandments that you bring out in the scriptures and women just lose it. But men understand it perfectly. You can't have order without obedience. This is obvious. There's obviously order in the scriptures. That's something every man can wrap his head around, and women just lose it. But then when it comes to this topic, it's the exact opposite. Women actually understand this and men don't. Women know, okay, well, look, if a girl is raped and she's impregnated, killing the rapist doesn't undo the rape. You can't unrape your daughter by murdering her baby's father. You're only making the situation worse. The best thing in that situation is to create a family. And it's funny that women understand this, but males, they lose their minds. Like, look, if somebody did that to my baby girl, I'll shoot his dick off. I'll shoot his nuts. I'll blow up his house. I'll kill everybody. Jake just turns into a super nigga, man. Jake becomes an imaginary protective father when this topic of rape comes up. Meanwhile, you send your daughter to a public school where she has trains ran on her in the bathroom. You're not protecting your daughter in this society, Jake. Drop the facade. We need the kingdom. We need sovereignty. not the Levitical priesthood in America. We need actual sovereignty. So this whole tough guy facade, I'm going to do this and that to somebody if they touch my daughter, that's not even in the scriptures. Before we get back to the scriptures, let me read this real quick. It says, why do women have rape fantasies? Rape fantasies reflect women's erotic comfort wherever it may lead. Now, again, before I read this, we don't teach rape. We're not saying rape is okay. The whole point of reading this is to go into the psychology of this. This is something that women think about constantly, and it's not the same way that you think about your daughter being raped. It says, so forget wish fulfillment. Today's psychologists suggest that women's rape fantasies have three other possible explanations. Sexual blame avoidance. This is the most popular explanation. It recognizes that women's erotic desires may trigger feelings of anxiety, guilt, and shame. How can women enjoy robust sexual fantasies without developing these feelings? Fantasize about being forced. That way, women aren't responsible for sex and need not feel distressed about it. I was forced. It wasn't my fault. The second one is sexual desirability. This explanation reflects the arc of romance fiction, which is wildly popular among women, and the single largest selling category of fiction, which is not romance fiction, it's pornography. It's porn for women. If you ever heard of any of this stuff, like 50 Shades of Grey, these books is really smut. It's rape porn, man. It goes so far beyond anything in Deuteronomy 22, anything in the Bible. It will blow your mind if you read what women are reading every day, man. This stuff is so far, like I said, there's a whole difference between how women look at it and how men look at it, especially if you have a daughter. You're not thinking clearly, but it says in romance novels and women porn, a powerful, dangerous man becomes so enthralled by the protagonist that he must have her, even if his pursuit is assaultive. Now, again, going back to female autonomy, you can't have a law in which something is a crime if a low-level man does it, but then if a powerful, dangerous man does it, then it's sexy. That's what you're teaching when you teach female autonomy. When you break down Deuteronomy, the 22nd chapter, incorrectly, what you're indirectly saying is that rape is the worst thing ever for an average guy to do it. But in these romance novels, when a powerful, dangerous man does it, then it's sexy. Then it becomes a bestseller. Then it becomes the #1 book of all time right behind the Bible. That's madness. That doesn't make any sense. Again, the Most High is not the author of confusion. You can't say that it's okay for one type of man to do it because he's rich, he's handsome, he's tall. But then another type of man, if he does it, it's the worst thing ever. That doesn't make any sense. It says, in romance novels, a powerful, dangerous man becomes so enthralled by the protagonist that he must have her even if his pursuit is assaultive. Eventually, she tames him and they marry and have children. The sexual desirability explanation says that women have rape fantasies to bolster feelings of seductiveness and desirability. I'm so hot, I drive men crazy. And that's it right there. I don't even need to read the third one. This is the real reason that they get off on it, because it's basically like it's saying that they're so hot, they're so valuable, they're so beautiful that a man will he'll risk everything. He'll jump out his body and do whatever it takes to have her. That's why it drives women insane. Now, again, I have to say this for the umpteenth time. We're not teaching the rape. We're not teaching that it's okay. The Bible is not teaching that it's okay. That's why there's a law against it. This is not a law promoting rape. This is a law punishing the random bride kidnapping, which that's another thing. This is going into, when you go into the commandments of the Most High, they all go into teaching Israel to not follow the way of the heathen. Let me get that in Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah chapter 10. I'm going to start at the top. Hear ye the word which Yahawah speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith Yahawah, learn not the way of the heathen. That's really the law, statutes, and commandments. That's our wisdom in the sight of the nations. The commandments teach us not to worship the idols of the heathen, not to follow the ways of the Canaanites, not to follow the ways of the Egyptians, not to follow the ways of the Moabites. One of the ways in the ancient world, the top way of getting a wife was arranged marriage. And outside of that, you had something called bride kidnapping. And Deuteronomy 22 and 28 and 29, this is a law against bride kidnapping. It's to dissuade bride kidnapping. Now, let me go into it real quick for brothers who don't know. This is bride kidnapping on Wikipedia. It says bride kidnapping, also known as marriage by abduction. Marriage by abduction or marriage by capture is a practice in which a man abducts the woman he wishes to marry. And this is what happened in the ancient world, and this still happens today. This goes on all over the world. When women get caught slipping, they get abducted. Even in America, you have children go missing. Where do you think little girls go when they're missing? They're somewhere on an island being freaked off on. They're somewhere, just being tied up. This is a sick world, and this is one of the things that went on in the ancient world. You had women, even going back into Israel. When you read Judges, what is it, the 21st chapter? When Benjamin was whittled down to they didn't have enough to replenish their numbers. The elders at that time, they promoted this. And this happened, man. This happened in Israel. This happened outside of Israel. And what is the purpose of this ultimately? Let me read some of this and go into why this happens. It says, in most nations, bride kidnapping is considered a sex crime because of the implied element of rape. Why does it say implied element of rape? Because there's something known as Stockholm syndrome. If you abduct a woman, she might like you. Now, that's not going to happen every time, but it's extremely common that if you abduct a woman, she ends up sympathizing with you. She ends up liking you. Now, the reason it says implied element of rape is because consent is irrelevant. Again, whether or not a woman likes it or not, the same exact action is taking place. So if you abduct a woman and she ends up liking you, she becomes fond of you, she, wants to be your wife, and then another guy does the exact same thing and that woman hates him, she feels like she's been completely violated, she's disgusted by him. Both of those men have done the exact same thing. You can't say, well, one of them is rape and one of them was just, extremely romantic. Things just got carried away. That's completely ridiculous. If two men commit the same act, the judgment should be the same. And the only way to ensure that is to take the woman's emotions out of the equation, which our people refuse to do. The majority of our people are gynocentric. They look at the scriptures through the lens of a woman, which again is ironic because women actually understand this judgment. This is the one judgment in the Bible that women understand, but men cannot wrap their minds around. Now, when you go back into this, it says what? Bride kidnapping is considered a sex crime because of the implied element of rape. Now, if you kidnap a woman and bring her back to your crib and then you put on a movie, like, look, we're going to watch Netflix, that doesn't matter. You can't give meaningful consent if you've been abducted. You can't say, well, look, I enslaved these people. So, there were some black women that were with it. There were some black women that weren't with it during slavery. Now, there are some bed wenches that were really cool with it, but it doesn't matter. You can't give meaningful consent if you've been abducted. So it doesn't matter what the woman feels, if she likes it, if she doesn't like it. You can't say that a man is less of a criminal if the woman is cool with it, but then he's more of a criminal if she's not cool with it. Like that doesn't make any sense. You can't govern a society based on how women feel because women are fickle. You have to judge a man's actions based on the man's actions, period. That's the bottom line. So it says, rather than a valid form of marriage, some types of it may also be seen as falling along the continuum between forced marriage and arranged marriage. Now, what does that mean? Continuum is a key word. What is this saying? Forced marriage and arranged marriage are two forms of marriage on the same continuum, meaning what? They both involve no requirement of consent from the woman. Anyone saying that Deuteronomy 22 and 28 is not talking about rape and the Most High is against anything that doesn't involve female consent, the question has to be asked, what about arranged marriage? They're on the same continuum. Forced marriage and arranged marriage are two types of marriage that are on the same continuum. Neither one of them involve female consent. So if the Most High requires female consent, then that means you're also against arranged marriage. Now, the Sakari, the IUIC, GOCC, all of these camps that break down Deuteronomy 22 incorrectly, are you also against arranged marriage? Are you saying that in the ancient world, a father didn't set up a marriage between the groom's family and his family, irrespective of the consent of the daughter? How can you be against this being talking about what it's clearly talking about, which is bride kidnapping, also known as marriage by abduction? If you're saying that this is not talking about marriage by abduction, then does every scripture in the Bible that deals with arranged marriage, is that also not talking about arranged marriage? Because again, they're on the same continuum. Forced marriage and arranged marriage are on the same. They're both marriages that don't involve the consent of the daughter. So how do you reconcile one? Okay, this is heinous, this is horrible, this is the worst thing ever, but this is royal, this is regal, this is righteous. Neither one of them involve female consent. So what does that mean? That means the law is based on what a man is doing to another man's daughter. In this case, you're defiling a woman, you're taking her virginity, and you owe the father 50 shekels of silver because you've humbled his daughter. That's what this is talking about. This isn't talking about rape is the worst thing ever. It's a heinous crime. That's a Western way of looking at things. Rape in the scriptures is not the worst thing that can happen to a woman. When you go into it, you had the, what was that? Those angels, they wanted to rape Lot's guest, and he offered his daughter. Why? That's not saying it's a good thing, but it's better for a woman to be violated than a man be penetrated. There's levels to this. Now in this society, again, that would be seen as the worst thing ever, but according to the scriptures, it's not so. Even when you go into this is where you get the term honeymoon. Matter of fact, yeah, it's somewhere down here. Yeah, rituals indicating a symbolic bride kidnapping still exist in some cultures. According to some sources, the honeymoon is a relic of marriage by capture. That's exactly what a honeymoon was. Now, the reason I bring all this out is because when you go into the ancient world, and even in modern day, as it tells you, this still goes on today. But in the ancient world, what would happen was you would see a woman you like, and instead of negotiating a dowry with the father, which is the proper way to do marriage, you would do something called bride kidnapping or marriage by abduction. Now, what does that do? If you kidnap someone's daughter and you spend a weekend with her, you get her pregnant, and then you pop up after the fact, after you've already impregnated his daughter, then you try to negotiate a dowry, what does that do? You're basically saying, look, your daughter's already off the market. I've already taken her virginity and she's pregnant. So now we're going to negotiate a dowry, but we're going to do it on my terms. That's a very despicable and sick thing to do, which is why there's a law against it. This is not a law promoting rape. This is a law with a penalty for bride kidnapping. That's what this is. In the ancient world, you would lay hold on a man's daughter and then negotiate the dowry after the fact. What this is saying is, no matter what you do, you have to pay 50 shekels of silver. That's why Deuteronomy 22 and Exodus 22 are two different things. This is not, there is no penalty of paying 50 shekels for enticing a maid. This is going into deceiving a woman. This is going into abducting a woman and impregnating her, also known as marriage by abduction. And the Sakari knows this. They've seen the videos. They know exactly what they're doing. But they also prey on our people's emotions. Anytime this topic comes up, they'll say something like, well, what if a 50-year-old man raped your 9-year-old daughter? What if your daughter got her period at 5? What if a 70-year-old man raped a 5-year-old? They immediately jump to this extreme, weird, like hypothetical scenario, and it's always an old man. It's always like some 50-year-old dude and 9-year-old girl. It's never like, well, what if a 22-year-old man? Because they teach that you're an adult at 20. That a woman, if she gets a period at 12, 13 years old, she's supposed to stay in her father's house menstruating year after year after year until she's 20 years old, which is complete madness, but that's a whole nother topic. They're bugged out of their minds and they're ashamed of the ways of our forefathers. They're ashamed of the ways of the Heavenly Father. This is ultimately of Yahawah, bahasham, Yahawashi. This isn't something Moses was just freestyling. This is actually an eternal righteous law, because without this law, then what? What would be, this is my question to anybody who says that this is not talking about rape. This is talking about enticing a woman. Okay, so you have an example of bride kidnapping. This goes on today. This went on in the ancient world. And this is where you get the term honeymoon from. So if this is not the righteous judgment for bride kidnapping, then what is? If you ask any of these emotional Israelites, well, what would you do in this situation? Since we're breaking down the scriptures incorrectly, what is the correct judgment in that case? Their response would be to kill the guy. Well, he raped a virgin. Let's kill him. Let's shoot the guy. Let's blow his nuts off. Let's do this. Let's do that. They're highly emotional. And that's clearly a ridiculous judgment, because if someone abducts your daughter and then you find out about it a week later and she's pregnant and you murder the father of her child, then what? Again, you can't unrape your daughter. She's still been raped. She's still been defiled. And now she's pregnant with the seed of a man that you just murdered. Which, that's not a killing, that's a murder, that's an unjust kill. So if your daughter gets raped and you kill the rapist, now what? Do you kill the baby also? Do you put your daughter on the street because she's no longer a virgin? Like what? This is clearly the proper response to that, because now the man that committed marriage by abduction, now he has to marry your daughter and there's a family involved. You get the 50 shekels, and if he doesn't have it, he has to work it off. And there's a family that's created by this. Now, is this optimal? Is this the best way to start a family? Absolutely not. This is horrible, but that's why there's a law against it. That's why we open with 1 Timothy, the first chapter. The law is good if a man use it lawfully. And knowing this, the law is not made for the righteous. The law is made for the wicked. This law is made for somebody who thinks in his mind, okay, I'm going to rape this chick, and then after I get her pregnant, then I can talk about a dowry. This law prevents that. This law deals with with justice ultimately. Like you can't just go around raping women and then just thinking that that's the way to get a wife. No, there's a law against that. Again, Great Millstone does not have a rape doctrine. We teach the truth of the Bible, which is that Deuteronomy 22 and 28 and 29 are talking about rape, the judgment of raping a virgin, as opposed to the judgment for raping a wife and the judgment for raping a woman that doesn't cry out. These are all talking about various forms of seizure, which the word rape simply means to seize, to grab. So, I mean, Abaratazah, the point has been made. Again, this is a very controversial topic, but it shouldn't be. It's very straightforward. When you read the scriptures, you don't see female autonomy. You don't see a woman saying, my body, my choice. There's not this westernized version of a woman telling a man what he can and can't do. That's not even a thing that existed on the earth 4,000 years ago. This is all, you can't retroactively fit a post-feminist society into what Moses is talking about here in the book of Deuteronomy. It's too different. You have to come out of this world, Jake. There's no possible way that this is talking about running game on a woman. Lay hold means to seize. And again, I pose my question to anyone, from the Sakari to the brother that left the comment on the comment board. If this is not talking about marriage by abduction, then what is the proper judgment for marriage by abduction? What's the proper, since we're breaking it down wrong, since we have the whole Bible right except for 2 verses, how would you break these 2 verses down? If this is not talking about rape, then what is the proper judgment for marriage by abduction? If someone kidnaps your daughter and they impregnate your daughter and you murder the father, then what? Do you now murder the child? Do you raise the child as your own? And then what happens when the son gets to be 12, 13 years old? What happens when he asks, where's my father? What happened to my father? Do you tell him, look, your father was a rapist, so I killed him? Is that the proper judgment for handling this situation? Since the Most High has it wrong, Great Millstone has it wrong, what is the proper judgment for someone abducting your daughter and impregnating her? How do you deal with the repercussions of that? If not making a family, if not forcing the father to be responsible for the decision that he made, then what is the proper response? Because everybody has an opinion about the scriptures and this law is to this and to that. While I'm in Deuteronomy, let me get this. This is 1 chapter over. This is the law dealing with when you take a bride by abduction in a war. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verse 10. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and Yahawah thy power have delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife. So this is talking about during times of war, if you're going to battle with your enemy and you win, and you take the women captives, you see one you really like, you want to go in unto her, then what? Verse 12, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month, and after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. Now, this is talking about how you treat a heathen. When you go to war against a heathen, if you kill off the men, you take a woman, you see one you really like, you bring her back to your house, and you make her your concubine. Now, to anyone saying there's no way that Deuteronomy 22 is talking about rape and forcing a woman to marry her rapist, well, we're reading the same thing right here in Deuteronomy 21. The only difference is this is not talking about Israelite women. This is talking about captives in war. This is talking about the heathen women. So if your argument is that the Most High is against a woman marrying her rapist, how do you break down Deuteronomy 21 and 13? It's the same thing. Again, the only difference is in this case, it's an act of war. And, you have a lot of people that are soft. They'll say, well, look, that's evil. That's a wicked law. So my question again is this. If you're in a war and you kill a woman's father, you kill all her brothers, you destroy her city, then what? If this is wicked, if this is wrong, then what is the alternative? What would be the right thing to do in this situation? You just leave her there to die? You kill off all the men, meaning she's not going to be able to survive. She's not going to be able to protect herself. You've killed off all the men in her city. You've destroyed the city and you just leave her there. No, the right thing to do, obviously, is to take her back home and make her a concubine. Now, to the Western mind, again, this is the most unconscionable, heinous act that you could ever do. How could you force yourself on a woman and force her to marry you? That's the worst thing ever. Meanwhile, the American government goes around the world. These American troops, they rape Iraqi women, they rape Afghan women, they rape the women, but they don't make them concubines. They just rape them and kill them, or they rape them and leave them there. Like, which one is really better? Which one is of the Most High? Which, when you read Exodus, the 15th chapter and the 3rd verse, it tells you that Yahweh is a man of war. Would a man of war be with, just going around the world, just raping people for no reason, just being a complete degenerate, or using women as what they're for, the spoils of war, the possessions of men, and forwarding family through that process? Again, it might be difficult for you to wrap your head around it, but that's what the scriptures are saying. And, this is not, I have to say this again, we're not promoting rape. We're not telling anybody to rape anybody. We haven't raped anybody. We're telling you what the laws of the Most High prescribe, and you're either with it or you're not. So Abaratazadis was edifying to the elect, and if it's something you're struggling with, then pray on it, man. This is not something we're going to fold on, because the Most High doesn't change. His word doesn't change. If there's something in the scriptures that makes people uncomfortable, that's their problem. They have to get with it or be destroyed. It is what it is. So Abaratazadis was edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahawah, bahasham Yahawashi, bahasham Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and Shalawam to the hopeful elect.